What happened was surgery went well on Friday. I woke up Friday night. I was fine. Saturday morning, I was okay. Sunday, I got out of bed. They cleaned the bed, changed my sheets. I got a sponge bath. Everything was great. Monday morning, the nurse came in, asked me what I wanted for breakfast. I told her. She walked down the hall, and I flatlined, which is dying.
Oof.
I flatlined. I was down for 7 minutes while they brought me back. They put
7
me
minutes.
7 minutes.
Is this even I mean, wow. I mean, without any like your brain damage or because
It's different for everyone. Some people can be down for a couple of minutes and have brain damage. Some people have been down longer than I have. Not a lot of people, to be honest. I've looked at it, but I don't want to get braggy about it. 7 minutes is a lot.
it's not a competition, Joe. It's
No,
not a competition.
It is not
okay?
a competition.
Being
7 minutes is a long time, and when I woke up for at least a week, my mother was going, "Hey, do you remember this? Hey, do you remember that?" And my mom was, trying to see what I remembered. And I finally said, "Mom, I remember everything." I said, if I forgot something about, years ago, let me find it. Let's not just quiz me about my life. And when I wrote my book, actually, my co-author, Jeff Schober, said, "You have an amazing memory." I said, "Yep, all my entire life except for 6 days when I have no memory." I've heard stories. They put me on a cold bed. Where they put you on a cold bed and they lower your body temperature right after. And I was trying to get up, and I was strapped to the bed, and that was very traumatic for my sister and my friend Reverend David Paul. When they saw that, I was muttering, "What day is it? What time is it?" I had 4 of my friends I coached with came every single day to see me. And my head coach has a saying. He always had, "You know who your friends are when you lose." Like when you're winning, everybody loves you. But when you lose, that's when you know who your friends are. So there are these 4 men who I coached with, and they came to see me every day when I was unconscious. And I said, "You really know who your friends are when you might be dead. They can only see you the last 15 minutes of each hour, and there's nothing to say." Because I was just muttering, "What day is it? What time is it?" My eyes were closed. I don't have any memory of Denny or Joe or George or Larry ever being there. I know they were there, but, and people, I had friends calling every day. My best friend and brother is terrified of hospitals. So he's never come see me in a hospital.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Well, my best friend, Rob, he's terrified of hospitals. So he doesn't come to hospitals, but he calls me every day. He calls me a couple times a day because I know he loves me. So I accept him for his fear of hospitals. And he's gotten better over the years, but back then he was he hates going into hospitals. And I don't blame him. Hospitals are not fun. Nobody wants to go to the hospital unless you're probably having a baby. That's the one thing you go to the hospital excited about. But anyway, I woke up and started my trek back.
But what happened? I mean, you flatlined 7 minutes. They brought you back, but why did you flatline in the first place?
It was just an arrhythmia. My heart had been, to get the heart valves, they put you on the heart and lung bypass machine, and it was just an arrhythmia that happened. It was an arrest. There were no clogged arteries. There were no. It was just some type of arrest that I went into when I flatlined, which it happens from time to time post surgery, and there was nothing to do other than bring me back and get me stable. And then when I woke up, find out how much damage was done, which mentally was just those 6 days. I don't remember anything. And I started the trek back. It's not that I forgot how to, they always well, you have to learn how to walk again. No, I knew how to walk. I just didn't have the energy. I literally I remember one morning early on, I sat up and was kind of doing some things with my hands. And by the time lunch, I was with my dad. By the time lunch got there, I was just laying back and I said, "Can you feed me?" And my dad jokingly was like, "You can't even feed yourself?" And I'm like, "Dad, he's like, "No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding." But then my dad would come every day because he worked early morning to mid-morning. Those were his hours. So he would come every day and help me get a sponge bath. And every day he would push me a little further to do a little bit more for myself. And the one
like you
day,
with your children you with your players. I mean, he was just
yeah,
a coach.
I said something much earlier in the interview, and it was on the day my mom and dad told me I had cancer, and he set me up for the rest of my life. And he said, being that I was a swimmer and I would play basketball with friends and I was very active, and I played tennis on a team at the time at the local park. He said, you can lay around for the next 2 years. You can lay around for the next 2 years and not compete in swimming and just lay on the couch. Or when you're sick, you're sick. When you're not sick, live your life. Do whatever you're going to do. And at the time, I was so active, I couldn't imagine laying around on the couch for 2 years. And what my dad taught me there, what he taught me, which has served me throughout my life, is my mom's the fighter, the Italian, and my dad is the Irishman. He's very steady and stoic. But what they taught me is, my dad said, you can't fight every day. But on the days you can't fight, don't lose any ground. Don't go backwards. So, fight, rest. Fight, rest. You may get pushed back by circumstances or your health, but don't go backwards. So he taught me that, and it served me my whole life.
A wise man.
A
wise man, your dad. My
dad, Harvard did a study. There are 7 kinds of intelligence, and only 2 you can learn from books. And I believe common sense and logic is one of those intelligence. And I always say my dad leads the league in common sense. He is he has a common sense about him. He always has. As I've gotten older, I find myself quoting him and realizing how he just gets it. He just gets things. He's very mechanically inclined. He was a good even though he didn't work. He's always had a love for cars and fixing cars and building cars, and he and his friends did that a lot, and he still does it a lot. He's the car guy in the family. But he never did that for a career. He did it for love, but he's always just had a common sense about him. He reads people well. He sees people. He reads them well. He reads situations well. He's the most common sense of anyone I've ever met, and barely got out of high school academically, but has done a lot and is definitely a source of wisdom for me. And that edict of don't give up any ground, fight when you can, rest when you have to mentality has gotten me through the toughest times in my life. And after I died and came back, I was in the hospital for 5 more weeks, and every day he would come in and help me. He would help me kind of start to give my own sponge bath. And one day, when I got up and started walking, after I would walk before the sponge bath and then come back and we would clean up, and then I would take another walk, and then it would be time for lunch. So one day we did the walk, and when I say I'm walking, I had a nurse on either side of me, my dad behind me with a wheelchair, and another nurse in front of me pulling the IV cart. And I was just trying to walk. And I would make it 10 feet and then sit down, and then make it another 10 feet and then sit down. So one day we did the walk, got the sponge bath, and then I said, I'm tired. I don't want to do my second walk. And my dad said, no, you're doing the second walk. And he walked out of the room, came back with nurses in the wheelchair. And that's what I needed. When Jennifer sets me straight, I had done 2 walks every day for a week. So I was just feeling sorry for myself. I hadn't done any. It's not like I had ran a mile and then came back. No, I was doing a little more, going a little further every day. I just felt sorry for myself on that day, and he didn't let me. And so
Everybody needs one. This kind of person every once in a while. I mean, someone who kicks you in the ass.
So I battled back from that. The cover of my book, that picture, is 37 or 38 days after I died. I got out of the hospital.
Oh, wow.
I got out of the
You look
hospital. Thank you. My wife hates that picture. She says I look gray in the face. But I was that was in Dallas, Texas. I was on Texas Stadium, the old Cowboy Stadium. And I traveled there with the high school football team in Pittsburgh that I coached. We went down there and lost a close game to this team from Dallas. But we had worked so hard that year to go to that game, I wasn't going to miss it. And it's 105 degrees on that field in late August in Dallas. The referee I'm talking to on the cover, it looks like I'm angry and I'm yelling at him, when in fact, when I lived in Dallas, I shared a mansion with these 3 other adult guys, and one of them was one of that referee's high school friends, because he said, I'm from Arlington. And I said, where'd you go to high school? Oh, I went to Arlington Lamar. And I said, oh my gosh, do you know Bob Sine? He's like, I graduated with Bob Sine. So we're having this beautiful conversation, but it looks like it looks like I'm yelling at the referee. But we were having this nice conversation about Bobby Sine. So went to there. Later that year in November, I got listed on the transplant list, both on the kidney list and the kidney pancreas list. I had what I was told to be a 2 to 3 year wait.
Oof.
It was going to be.
And could a kidney hold that long?
Yeah, you just you stay on dialysis, which the process of dialysis is what the kidneys do. It cleans and filters your blood, and that I say that like it's easy. It's not easy. It's 3 hours, 3 days a week, 4 hours a day. Some people go longer than that. I was fortunate enough just to go 3 days a week, 4 hours a day, and you have to go sit in a chair, and they literally clean up your blood, and they take all the fluid off you. And I did that for that time. And so from November of that year, it was 15 months when I got the phone call that a 16-year-old boy had been in a car accident, and I was offered his kidney and pancreas, and I of course said yes. And I went down on, he'd been in the car accident on February 12th. It was a Friday. I was called on Saturday, and I went down there on Saturday, but I didn't get the transplant until the Sunday, the 14th, February 14th, which in America is National Organ Donor Day. It's also Valentine's Day. And
Valentine's Day.
I got that transplant and woke up the next morning, and I learned that my kidney worked on the table, and by the next morning they took me off the insulin drip, so I was no longer a diabetic. I would later learn that when your kidney works on the table, what that means is when they connect it, you pee all over the operating room. So they connected it, and I peed all over the table. So sorry for that, team at UPMC, Starsville Clinic, Montefiore. Sorry about that.
I think they were kind of happy when they saw it.
Yeah,
I think they know what that means.
I was just excited, Sometimes you pee when you're excited. So I peed, and I just had blood work done last month, and my kidney is pumping as strong as it was a month after my transplant, which is to say perfect. It's been 11 and a half years, and I'm very blessed. And it was 6 months later that I went to, and it was a long road back, but it was 6 months later that I went to my reunion and first was inspired to get a life. And when I first met Jennifer, and then it was a year and a half, it was the following February, a year and a half later, when I was coming up on it was couple weeks after my anniversary for my transplant, when I went to that 40th birthday and officially met her and got to know her. And the other part of the story, which I hope people find inspiring, is this: when you learn that you're getting an organ offered, organ or organs offered to you, you only know certain things. I knew it was a male, a boy. I knew he was 16. I knew they tell you generally where he's from, like a town, and I knew it was a car accident. I knew he had sustained a head injury in a car accident. And, a lot of people don't realize that for every 1,000 people that die, only 3 of them die in a manner that facilitates organ donation. So for every 1,000...
in a manner that it's
yes,
not possible to donate your organs.
Not everyone who dies can donate their organs.
Oh.
You have to die in a certain way. It's a brain. You have to have a brain death. So only 3 of every 1,000 people that die, only 3 die in a manner that allows organ donation. So the numbers are low, and they do so much. They do so much with what the resources they have. These teams and these hospitals, and God bless them. So you're always wondering, oddly enough, and we talk about mental health. It was the summer after I died that I felt myself getting depressed, and when I spoke to a therapist for a couple months, and what I realized was my father, my sister, and 2 of my friends offered me their kidney. None of them were a match. I was going to have to wait for someone to die. And I was having what I would call pre-survivor's guilt, which was I didn't want someone to have to die so I could live. And that's not how organ donation works. Someone doesn't die for me. Someone dies and the organs go to me, but they're not dying for me. It's just a continuation. It's a continuation of their life as it's looked by. And these people, these donor families, and I'm going to tell you about mine because I love them, they're in the depths of grief. And they're in the worst place many of them are. And my donor parents, Justin's mother, Rhonda, his biological father, Ronald, and then his stepfather of, almost his whole life, Scott, they were all there for the decision. And they're in the absolute depths of grief. Their son's been in a car accident. No one was drinking. It was the middle of the day. The other 5 teenagers walked away from the accident pretty much unscarred. The one girl broke her jaw. She had broken her jaw. And Justin sustained a head injury that he never came back from. He was brain dead. And they're in the depths of grief.
What happened? Like what kind of car accident?
It was admitted on the scene. So Justin had slept over a friend's house because they had Friday off from school. And it was the winter time, but the roads were dry. And he slept over his friend's house. And his friend asked his mother, "Hey, can I go get my other friends and we play video games and hang out all day at our house?" The mother said, "Sure, if you pick up your sister who slept over her friend's house last night." So the driver and Justin went driving around picking up all the friends. And he also picked up his sister. So by the time they were picking people up, Justin was in the 3rd row of the minivan with the driver's 12-year-old sister. They were driving down a road and they were going to turn. And they had the turn signal on. They were being followed by a truck. And the truck driver admitted on the scene that he reached for his sandwich and he fumbled it. And while he fumbled his sandwich, someone came in the other direction. That in those moments, someone came in the other direction. So rather than making a clean left, the driver of the minivan had to stop. Rather than risk cutting into oncoming traffic. He made the wise decision and the truck driver closed the distance. By the time he looked up, I'm sure he slammed on the brakes. He rear-ended the minivan with his truck. And he admitted that on the scene. He admitted it. And other than the young woman, the 12-year-old from what I heard, she broke her jaw. Justin hit his head and never came back from that. That's called brain death. They do multiple tests to gauge that. And no one, just for my transplant myths out there, people who believe in transplant myths, they don't save your life to get your organs. They save your life to save your life. And then once they have saved your life, like they flew Justin's into the hospital. He almost died on the way in. They kept him alive. They got him to the hospital, as they did many people. And then they sustain him. His heart's pumping. Okay, he's breathing, maybe on his own, maybe not. And then they try to wake you up. They try to wake you up. They try to wake you up and talk to you. And when you're non-responsive, then they do a scan of your brain. It's called a brain apnea test. And when they see no electricity, no activity in your brain, they test it again hours later. This isn't a coma. This is brain death. No one in the history of the world has ever come back from brain death. It's why it's called brain dead. Your brain is dead. It doesn't regenerate. A lot of people think, well, they get their organs and they could come back if they're in a coma. No, that's very different. Comas and brain death are different. When I was in a coma, my brain was still working. It was telling my heart to beat. It was telling my body to breathe. Plus, I'm sure I had other brain activity going on, whether I was dreaming or whatever, unconscious. When you have brain death, there's nothing going on. Your brain is electricity and pulses. Brain death means nothing is going on. The lights are off. No one's ever come back from that. And I don't mean to be gruesome, but people believe this myth that you can come back and they're just there to get your organs. It's not true. And once that's explained to these donor parents, potential donor parents, they make the most beautiful decision in the worst time of their life, and that's to help other people. So I love Rhonda. I love Scott. I've never met my Justin's biological father, Ronald. I have a donor brothers and sisters. I love all of them because in that worst moment, they made a decision to save other people's lives, and I was one of them. So that happened in February of that year, 2010. And coming up on the first Christmas, I sent you can send anonymous letters through the local organization. Mm-hmm. You can thank them, but you can't tell them anything about them. I sent that letter, and then it was a year later in February as I approached, and that was the February I would meet Jennifer in 2012. That's when I was getting ready to send them a letter on the second anniversary of my transplant. I was going to send them another little thank you note, just telling them I love them. I don't know who they are, but I love you, and I think of your son every day. And that's when I got the call that they wanted to meet me. And by the time, what I learned later was my brother, my donor brother, was trying to be there because he's in the he's in the U.S. Army, and he came back, and then he ended up getting deployed, and they went to see him, and he couldn't make it. So it was just my donor sister Courtney and Scott and donor mother Rhonda, and we got to meet, and they met my mother and father, stepmom, and my sister, and we all met, and there's a lot of tears and things, and it's a beautiful moment, and there's nothing you can say. It's the only time in my life, and this says something about me having a dark side and maybe even a little bit arrogant. But when you go through cancer when you're a kid, you know what's important in your life. And I tell you this to tell you, I was never afraid to ask a girl to dance or ask a girl out. I didn't want to get a no, but I knew it wasn't the end of the world, right? I'm like, oh, okay, well, I suck. I messed up. So I was never afraid to ask a girl out or to ask her to dance at a dance. I didn't, I was embarrassed when she said no or whatever. So I was never afraid of meeting anyone. I've never been afraid on a job interview. It's always been excitement. And that day, my sister saw in my face that something was up. And she said, before they came in, and she said, what's up? And I said, I just want them to like me. I want them to think that I'm worthy. I want them to like me. And she's like, well, Joe, no one's worthy of their son's life. but you can only my sister said, you can only do your best to honor the gift you've been given, right? That's what you say. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. She's like, they're going to love you. Just show them love and they'll love you. And of course she was right, but it was the first time in my life, and maybe since, that I worried what someone else thought of the person that I was. And still to this day, I want them. They do like me. They love me. I want them to feel like I'm honoring their son's memory. And sometimes I talk too much about them, and they're very private people, and they're beautiful people. I love them. I think about their son every hour, I think. I mean, it's funny because I'll go through a couple hours of my day and not think about it. It won't come to my mind. And then I kind of feel bad. But I think of Justin all the time because I'm so blessed to have all the health that I do have. And he's part of the reason. The people at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, they're part of the reason. God is the reason. My family is the reason. All of my friends and family who have always supported me with prayers and rides to the doctors and all those things, they're all been parts of it, and I'm thankful for every part of it. So it takes a lot. It takes more than just one person to build an inspiring story. And I know there's a lot of inspiring stories out there, and people just can't convey them the way I do, kind of like the way my dad was honored to be part. My dad was honored to be part of a union. He loved that union. He loved the guys in that union, but he didn't feel comfortable doing the speech. So there's a lot of people out there with inspiring stories that they've been through tough times and championed other people, and they just aren't as accomplished as I am in talking, because I've been this way my whole life, talking about being inspiring, trying to inspire others, trying to show people love and that they can get through whatever they get through. It's not everyone's going to die for 7 minutes. Not everyone's going to beat cancer. Not everyone, there are people who I admire that have gone through very different things. Actually had a conversation with a friend of mine who's just 2 years older than I am, and early in his life, in his 30s, he had a stroke in his brain, and he can't work because he has shunts in his brain, and he was a very accomplished pharmaceutical salesman, and he was winning at life, but now he's just a disabled guy. And we were talking about it, and he goes to these stroke support groups, and he sees people that have had strokes like him, and half of their face is like that, or they can't walk. And when I walk into, as long as I have my sunglasses on, you can't see my fake eye. When I walk into a room, you don't know I've been through all these things. When Tony walks into a room or drives a car, you don't know he's literally disabled and has had strokes in his head. Now, if he gets in a car accident or a basketball hits his head, he could go out. So he has to be very careful about what he does. But at least we don't look like that. And that's a blessing in itself. And he and I had this conversation, like, he kind of said, well, what if you didn't have all your mental acuity? And I said, that would bother me, I'm sure. And I said, I'd rather lose my foot than lose my mental acuity. I said, you could take my legs off at the knees. I'll find a way to get around. But the fact that I've been blessed enough, I was dead for 7 minutes. Tony had bad strokes. We both have all our mental acuity. We are so blessed by that, and we're so humbled that we have those things. And Tony can go to stroke groups and talk to people about being inspiring and overcoming things because we do have this mental acuity. Once again, like we talked about, that's a responsibility we have to share, and we've been given this blessing, and it's up to us to share it with people. We're responsible to inspire people. So I'm not trying to end this, but this is what you're doing. You're sharing these inspiring stories with people. And I love this genre that you have here because there are inspiring stories in everyday people. One of my favorite podcasts, and I was interviewed on it, is called Fascination Street. And the host, Steve Owens, and I become friends. We talk a couple times a week, sometimes every day. And just from me being on, and I've never met him in person because of COVID and things like that. And someday we will. But his premise is everyone has a fascinating story. Now, he's had celebrities and sports figures and gold medal winners, but he's also had goofballs like me on there who've just been through something. And, he's had Orienthi and Ed Asner and people from the Adam Carolla show. He's had big name people on his podcast, and he gets 25,000 downloads a week. But his premise is everyone has a fascinating story. He interviewed his mother-in-law. He's interviewed people that just have a local business and they served in the military. So he finds the fascinating story in people. And what you're doing, I think, which is a great blessing to so many, is you're finding the inspiring stories in the everyday people. And
thank you.
Everyone knows this. Everyone should know the story of Fred Smith. Fred Smith was a senior business major at Yale University, and he had an entrepreneur's class, and he had to come up with an original business idea. And Fred turned in his early draft of his original business idea, and the professor said, "This isn't feasible. This will never work. Come up with something else." So Fred went back and created something different and turned it in, got the grade, and graduated. He then took his original idea and tried to turn it into a business. Do you know what business that is?
No.
FedEx. His professor didn't think that shipping packages on a plane would ever be affordable, or no one would ever need things that fast. And look where we are today. Like FedEx preempted UPS. UPS was already around, but FedEx got things there. And now different, I have a friend and client who works on movie cars. And he built the cars for the Joker and the original Suicide Squad. And these movie companies have something where they'll come pick it up and drive it to a plane and put it on a plane, and someone is waiting when the plane lands because he was shipping parts. He was building the parts here in Florida in the morning, and they were on the set in Toronto by 5 o'clock.
Wow.
So that Fred Smith idea of, he had an idea and then he put it into work. That's inspiring. So those are commonly known inspiring things. And some of the guests that I've listened to on your podcast, they inspire me. I find inspirations in people, in my Jennifer, who goes to work every day and teaches third graders. She loves those kids. She absolutely loves them, loves the challenge. Third graders can be sometimes little babies and sometimes pretty precocious. She loves them all every day. I couldn't do it. So I find inspiring things in every kid that I coached, every person around me. And it's just like anything else. If you look for it, you'll find it. If you look for hate, you'll find hate. If you look for love in people, you'll find love.
Yeah, it's true. I was pretty quiet the last minutes you talked, and when you talked about your organ donor, I was taken a little bit emotionally. If you would have asked me a question, I probably wouldn't be able to answer it. In Germany, we say ich hatte ein bisschen Pipi in den Augen, like I had pee in my eyes, which I don't know if that makes sense in English. Probably not. It's such a heartbreaking story, and yet it's so beautiful. It's on the one side, it's so sad that he's dead and he's brain dead, and for the parents, he's never coming back. Like, this is your son, it's only a body now. There's no more soul in it, no more brain that can do anything. And yet that these people make this decision at the moment that, okay, then with his last breath, he will do some good for many people, or for people, and give them the biggest gift maybe there is to give. Like give your like the biggest sacrifice you can do is like we talked about this earlier. It's like you do the biggest sacrifices is like Jesus did, like giving up yourself for other people and doing this, making this decision for your own child. This is tough. I mean, this is tough, but I mean, and I think you are surrounded by so many inspiring people. Your sister beginning with like, when she said, "Come on, Joe, no one can substitute their boy." When you met them the first time, where you said like, you want them to like him, like you, and your sister's like very, very inspiring and grown up, and your dad is like this Superman who pushes you when you're down, when you need it, when you are out of motivation, but you should do something. And your mother, of course, too. I mean, your whole family. You could do a podcast about your whole family, I guess. Not only about you, but your whole family. And what you said about the inspiring people or the inspiring things in the everyday life. Yeah, that's exactly what I try to do with this podcast. To find the inspiring stories in the everyday life, because everyone has an inspiring story somewhere if he wants to talk about it. And I think that's the important thing, to walk through your life, to go through your life and see the inspiration all around you, see the beauty all around you, and see what you could do with your life, yeah, all around you, and get inspiration, get motivation, and get good, yeah, also have a good time listening to good stories from people you've maybe never heard of. And probably every 79 people who have been on my podcast, no one has ever heard of. Like, there's no superstar. Maybe a few people from my friends know them, but there's no superstar in it. And I don't want to play down their success stories or their inspirational stories, because they are inspirational. For me, it's just hard to grab, because they made it so high. They've accomplished so much that for me it's like, okay, they had this hard time and now they are like on the top of whatever they are doing, and it's hard to grab, like, because these are these outstanding personalities. These are this 1 in 1,000 years, 1 in 100 years guys or girls, and it's, for me, it's easier to grab stories like yours. You're not a famous person. You're not a superstar. You're just a normal guy. Like, you're not even collecting.
I'm an average Joe.
The everyday normal Joe. And I honestly, I also couldn't say something because I was so focused. Honestly, I forgot that we are recording anything, even though the microphone is right in my face. I mean, Joe, I appreciate this so much, and these kind words from you coming from you, even though we know since a week or two. That's crazy, and I really appreciate that you took your time. And I mean, we recorded over 2 hours already. That's the longest podcast I've ever done, and I think we could go on for 2 additional hours. I mean, you've experienced so much.
Yeah, and I didn't get into everything, but I do want to say something, because when you were mentioning people in my life, I realized I haven't talked much about my mom. And it's just because that's the way the conversation went. I call my mom every morning. And, she's going to be 74 next month, and she's a fighter. And so I'll tell you, that's how I'll explain my mom to you. First of all, she's, like I said, she's an Italian, and she can yell at you 1 minute and then make you something to eat the next. That's her back and forth emotions. That's where I get it.
Yeah.
But there's this. So my mom's favorite movie character and favorite movies of all time, oddly enough, her being 100% Italian American, is Rocky, right? Rocky Balboa, Sylvester Stallone. So I think she's seen Rocky 1 well over 100 times. Every time it's on TV, she watches it. And I found a shop called the Sly Stallone Shop, and that's where I bought her last present from Christmas, and I'm getting her this other one for her birthday. So hopefully, Mom, don't go to that. Mom, I know you're listening. Don't go to Sly Stallone Shop, because that's where all your presents are coming from for the next couple of years. I don't want you to go there and buy anything. Let me buy you things from there. Anyway, so there's a scene in Rocky 3, and it's when he goes off. He's lost to Mr. T, and he goes off to Los Angeles to train with Apollo Creed. And Apollo Creed and he race on the beach, and he's trying to get Stallone to beat him on the beach, which is hilarious in itself because Sylvester Stallone is a 5'8" Italian American guy, and Carl Weathers, the actor who played Apollo Creed, is a former Oakland Raider running back. So in no lifetime, you could cut off one of Carl Weathers' legs, and Sylvester Stallone couldn't beat him in a race. So I find that funny. So at any rate, the second time they race, Rocky gives up, and Apollo Creed is like, you quit on me. There is no tomorrow. And Adrian comes over to Rocky, his wife, and says, why are you quitting? Why are you doing this? And she said, it doesn't matter about the money. If you want to fight because you think you need to fight, then fight. She's telling him, don't do it halfway. Don't do it because you think you should. Do it because you want to do it. Do it because it's important to you. Don't just go through the motions. And that's what she says to him in a very nice way. And he says back to her, because this is some of the greatest script language of all time, he says, how'd you get so tough? And she says, I'm in love with a fighter. So no one's ever asked me no one's ever said that to me. No one's ever said, how did you get so tough? How did you overcome this? I know you believe in God. I know your strength comes from God, but what makes you so tough? And it's easy. I was raised by a fighter. My mother is a fighter. She was on local council. She fought for our schools. When she was a librarian in my Catholic school, she started an SAT prep course for 7th and 8th graders. My mom is a rock star teacher, giving all of herself to her kids. When she was a librarian, and as librarians started to go away, she became a computer teacher late in her career. She learned about computers. She's been a computer teacher. So
awesome.
My mom's a fighter, and I'm actually part of an event tomorrow night. And in my speech as chairman of the board of the Ava's Heart Foundation, I said I'm a child of God, husband to an angel, and son of a warrior mom. So my mom is a tough lady. You do not want to mess with her. She's also has a master's degree in education, and but she yells when the Steelers are on. She yells at the TV when something is going well, or it's really funny to watch. That's a lot of moms in Pittsburgh, but I couldn't get off here without showing my mom so much love for everything. And when I was going through chemotherapy, she was there with me. When I was going through my toughest times, she was right there with me as an adult, because Jennifer wasn't in my life yet. My mom has sat by many a hospital bed, and it was the last time that I had died, and 5 weeks later got out, and we went to one of my favorite places just to get a little bite to eat, and we were sitting there, and I went to get up to get more napkins, and I said, no, I want to do it. And I came back, and she was really quiet, which is uncharacteristic for her, is not characteristic of her. And I said, it got quiet, and I said, I guess I really scared you this time. And she was like, yeah. So, she's prepared many times in my life for my death. And I've taken her right up to that point a couple times and passed it once. And it goes back to something her mother said to her when my sister was first born. My grandmother was there with my mother and my older sister, and my mother was holding my older sister and said, I love little girl so much. I don't know what would happen to me if something happened to her. And my grandmother said, no, you can't think that way. Are you crazy? God has loaned you that child. That child was given to you by God. If something happened to her, God forbid, you would go on. But that child is on loan from you, from God. It's your responsibility to take care of that child and any other child you have. So that's the kind of the mentality of the women that I come from. That was my grandmother, my Italian grandmother, and that is my mom. Those are the women that have forged me into the person I am, as well as, the guys, the men in my life who are stoic and strong. And that's where I come from. And if you... I've always wanted to say this in a speech. If you can't get inspired by that, I don't have anything for you. And if you can't see God at work in my life, I don't have anything for you. And I've always wanted to say that, and I'm glad I felt comfortable doing it here. And, because I always wanted to say to people, especially parents that are listening, and maybe if you're not even listening, or if you're not even a parent, you can understand this. People ask me why I give so much credit to God. And, at some point, you have to just say, this is my belief, and this is why I do it. But I want to say things to people like, if you can't hear God in the echo of your child's laughter, then you're not going to want to hear what I have to hear. If you can't see something inspiring in everything that I've been through, and I've been through it. I didn't do it all myself. That's my message. But if you can't find inspiration in all the stories that, Luca, you share with people, and you can't find inspiration in everything I just shared, I got nothing for you. And you need to maybe look at yourself, because you may not be looking for inspiration. You may not be looking for a way out. And that's okay. You can feel that way. But when you look for love, you find love. When you look for hate, you find hate. When you look for inspiration, you find inspiration. And I think we all need inspiration on some level every day. Just like Zig Ziglar said, motivation is like bathing. You have to do it every day.
Yeah. Oh, Joe. I mean, I'm not going to mess your message up with words from me. So, guys, this was fantastic. Thank you for listening. Joe, thank you for being on and sharing your... There are no words for this kind of inspiration. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for being here, Joe. And take care of each other. Be friendly to each other. Stay nice and stay positive. See you next time.